Welcome to the Building Your Brand course, Module 3, Bringing Your Brand to Life. I'm Luiza Campos. I'm the president of Marca Strategy, a brand building studio. This is the last module, Module 3, of the course, Building Your Brand. If you haven't watched the two previous modules, please do that first, as the concepts shared build on each other. Bringing your brand to life requires work, both internally within your organization and externally to the audiences you're trying to reach. A cohesive approach ensures that everyone, from staff to clients, funders, donors, understands and feels connected to the brand's mission and values. In this module, we'll go through step by step on how to bring your brand to life and achieve that coherence and consistency. I'll share some examples to help illustrate these concepts and to help you apply them to your own organization. So let's get started. The implementation phase is arguably the most critical part of successfully building a strong brand. In my experience, this is the phase where many organizations fail. You can have a strong brand foundation with the right purpose and set of values, but if those remain abstract concepts or words on your website or walls without real understanding on how to bring them to life, your brand will never become the brand you envision or are trying to build. Your brand platform, purpose, and values should not be tools just on display. They must be tools put into use every day by everyone. This is important, every day by everyone. In this graph, we depict the 5 steps of the implementation process, starting with internal immersion to operationalizing the values, developing needed assets, to the external launch, and finally the ongoing step, which is when you build the needed tools and processes to ensure you don't take the foot off the pedal. Bringing your brand to life is like being a parent. Your job doesn't end when the child is born. In fact, it is the contrary. You have to continuously care for, nourish, and ensure that your brand is evolving and growing strong every day. So let's look at each of these steps in detail. Let's discuss internal immersion, step 1. Brands grow from the inside out. This means that if internally your staff, those who actually form the brand, don't understand the brand purpose and values, we can't hope that anyone else outside the organization will. Understanding the brand doesn't mean memorizing the purpose and values. What I mean is ensuring that all staff understands the meaning, the intention behind the purpose and values, and knows how they can bring it to life within their existing roles and responsibilities. Brands ultimately are the sum of the behaviors, actions, and decisions of those who form the brand, those who represent the organization, make decisions, big or small, on behalf of the organization. In other words, your staff. So it is imperative that every staff member understand the role they play in building the brand and ensuring that the work they do and how they do it aligns with the values of the organization and ultimately strive towards the purpose. Let's look at the steps for the internal immersion. Step 1, engage the team in the process. Steps 2, present the brand platform. Step 3, connect the values to actions. This is defining your culture. And finally, step 4, brainstorm role-specific values expression and alignment. So let's break these down. First step, engage the team. Engaging the team during the brand platform development phase can take different forms. Some organizations choose a few staff members to be part of an internal team where they are engaged throughout the process. Some seek all staff input at key points of the process, while others do both. For the implementation process, however, all staff engagement is key. You can develop a great brand purpose and values, but if staff doesn't understand or knows how to bring it to life, your brand will not resemble what you're trying to build. So let's see some examples. A great example of that is Enron. If you recall, Enron was an American energy, commodities, and services company based in Houston, Texas. And as you can see from the photo here, Enron had a great set of values, including respect, integrity, excellence. Before its bankruptcy on December 2001, Enron employed over 20,000 people and had revenues of over $100 billion. In fact, Fortune magazine named Enron America's most innovative company for 6 consecutive years. At the end of 2001, it was revealed that Enron had committed accounting fraud, which has ever since become known as the Enron scandal. So Enron has become synonymous with willful corporate fraud and corruption. So this is a perfect example of how the organization values were obviously not being put to practice. This is a great example of how it's so important to obviously first come up with the right set of values for your organization, values that you can live by in good times and in bad times, but also ensuring that your team, that engagement of your team is really critical to ensure that they understand what these values mean and how they, each individually, can build the brand you envision by following and aligning with these values. Step 2, present the brand platform. The way to do this can take different forms, but it needs to be a deep engagement and not solely a presentation of your purpose and values or sharing wallet-sized cards or cheat sheets with all staff with the purpose and values on it. The purpose is not to get staff to memorize them. The intention is to get staff to really understand the intention behind it and how they can contribute to it. So when you present your brand platform, you need, of course, to first present the brand platform to everyone. And you can have a brand launch event or a workshop to introduce the brand to staff, but you should not stop there. You should continue to communicate the why behind the brand. Why is it important? Why are these set of values and the purpose statement important? Why should employees care? How can each staff member help strengthen the brand? These are really the key questions and answers that you need to communicate to all staff, that you need to engage in discussion with all staff for them to fully understand why is this important and the role that they play. And encourage active participation when you do this. So staff can feel free to ask questions and clarify concepts. You also should provide training and resources. So one presentation or one discussion or workshop may not be enough. You should provide staff with resources such as your brand book, which we will talk more about later, and I'll show you examples, some toolkits, and yes, some cheat sheets as well. But make sure managers or supervisors have a deep understanding of the brand so they can help clarify concepts to their teams after the launch or workshop. Step 3, connecting values to actions, which translating the values into actions is how you define your organizational culture. An organizational culture are the values and behaviors that we consistently see and that we nourish. To create the real life we want to see in an organization, you need to ensure that your organizational core values are clearly articulated, easily understood, and relatable to all staff. Ensure that all team members understand, embody, and actively contribute to the organization's core values through their actions. These actions are, number one, how we behave individually and as a group. Number two, how we interact with each other and others. And number three, how we make decisions together. To do this, you need to simplify and specify each core value. So define what each value means in the context of your organization and avoid vague or abstract language. Provide concrete examples of how each value can be demonstrated in day-to-day work. So provide examples that make sense for your organization. Break down core values into behavioral expectations for different roles and departments. So what are the expected behaviors from staff? So for example, if one of your core values is integrity, clarify what this looks like in practice. It could be adhering to ethical standards, owning mistakes, and being transparent in communications. It's important that you continuously nourish these values to ensure these are not just words, but that you continue to live by them and bring them to life, which will then bring the brand to life. Some organizations have the leadership team translate the values into actions and then present that to all staff. My recommendation is to have a high-level description of what each value represents, of what each value means to the organization, and include some specific real-life examples. By using examples of how, as an organization, you'll apply these values, you will help move the values from abstract concepts to tangible actions. The best way to create real-life examples is to think of a real-life difficult situation or a dilemma that your organization may face for each of the values. So for example, let's say your organization has care as a value. Now, you may have a situation where a team member is consistently not delivering on their work and disrupting the team dynamic. With the value of care in mind, what steps as an organization should you take to help this team member succeed, and how far are you willing to go to help this team member while also caring for the rest of the team that is picking up the slack? So that's an example of a dilemma that will put you as a leadership team, as an all staff, will put you in a situation where you have to decide, well, what does this value then mean? And how would we bring this value or act consistently with this value when situations like this arise? Thinking of situations or dilemmas like this one for each value and articulating your position as an organization is what will clarify and specify what each value means and how, as an organization, you live by that value. In addition to clarifying how each value is interpreted using dilemmas or challenges, it's very helpful to brainstorm specific ideas on how each team member can bring the values to life and, of course, the brand to life. Each team member know their specific role and tasks the best, and therefore they can best identify ways that they can bring the brand to life. So let's look at some examples. A great example of this is in Disney parks, how Security staff, for instance, came up with the idea of carrying autographed journals with them and ask kids who are dressed up as a Disney character if they can give their autograph. This is a great way to ensure that those kids and their parents feel that magic of Disney. Another example is how the janitorial staff came up with the idea of using their mops to paint with water characters on the floor to entertain those waiting in long lines. These are really simple things that don't take away from the roles of staff, but it significantly reinforces the values and the brand of Disney. Another great example is how the Virgin Group communicate their Wi-Fi password. Instead of having it printed in a card or written in a whiteboard, they write it in red lipstick on a mirror in boardrooms. This is a really subtle yet great way to do something that you already have to do, which is communicate your Wi-Fi password, but in the Virgin brand way. So another really simple way of reinforcing your brand. Let's talk about step 2, operationalize. Operationalizing core values means integrating them into every aspect of your organization's day-to-day operations, ensuring that they're lived and reflected in both the behaviors of your team and the systems that support them. To do this, review all the systems and processes you have in place and embed your core values in these systems and processes. So for example, if you were to embed the core values in your hiring process, so the objective is to ensure that new employees are aligned with your core values from the start. So you may include questions related to the core values in the interview process, for instance, to assess candidates' alignment with them. You can incorporate core values into job descriptions and onboarding materials. And during the interview, you can ask candidates to share examples of how they have demonstrated similar values in their previous roles. So for example, if collaboration is a core value, ask candidates to share a story about a time when they worked with a team to solve a complex problem, or when they experienced conflict during a collaboration project, and what did they do to solve it. If you're going to also integrate core values, for instance, into training and development, which is another process you likely have in place, make core values a key part of that employee development and learning. So you design training programs that incorporate the core values, teaching employees how to apply them in their day-to-day work. You can include case studies or those real-life examples I mentioned before, and role-playing activities that focus on how employees can use the core values to navigate challenges. Offer ongoing professional development opportunities that reinforce the values. It's really important to be always reinforcing these values and reminding people or helping staff to come up with more and more ideas of how to implement these values, how to demonstrate these values. So for example, an organization with a core value of client-focused might have training sessions that walk employees through real-life client service scenarios to highlight how the values should guide their decision-making. If another process like aligning performance management with the core values, that would be a really important process to align with the core values. So make the core values a measurable part of employee performance. This is really key, because if it is not something that is part of an employee performance, it is and can be taken as not an expectation, but rather an option for staff. And that's not the case. So incorporate core values into the performance review process by assessing how well employees embody them in their work. You can develop a value-based recognition system, for instance, where employees are recognized for demonstrating core values. And set key performance indicators related to the core values, especially those linked to accountability, for instance, customer service, collaboration, and so forth. So for example, for a core value like accountability, employees can be evaluated based on their ability to take ownership of projects, meet deadlines, and provide clear updates. Embedding core values into policies and procedures. You should ensure that company policies reflect and support core values. So review company policies like HR procedures, for instance, and operational guidelines to ensure they align with your core values. Create decision-making frameworks that incorporate core values so that leaders and employees alike are using values to guide their actions and decisions. Ensure your reward and disciplinary systems are aligned with your core values, rewarding those who live by them and addressing behavior that undermines them. So for example, if one of your core values is inclusion, ensure policies around recruitment, promotion, and employee well-being reflect this, such as having clear diversity initiatives and providing equal opportunities for advancement. How you do your work is as important as the work you do. So to build the right culture and ensure your brand is tangible, your values must be lived and reflected in both the behaviors of your team and the systems that support them. So let's look at some examples. Netflix's Keeper Task is a process that the company has in place to help managers identify the right team members for their company. Managers ask themselves, which of my people, if they told me they were leaving, would I fight hard to keep? This question helps clarify which team member are the right fit for the organization and which ones are not, and help leaders think about what they need to do to keep the right team members and the right culture. So this is a simple question, but it helps guide leaders in their decision-making process and alignment with the brand values. Zappos is another example where the interview questions that they have are really out of the ordinary and are designed to assess both the skills and experience required for the position, but most of all, if it is the right cultural fit. I don't know about you, but I have never been asked questions such as, if you have to plan a parade, what would be the theme? So this question may seem really odd, but these types of questions are helpful for Zappos to assess the right culture fit, as well as for the candidate themselves, as these questions by themselves reveal a great deal about the culture of that organization. And candidates can then decide if this is a good fit for them or not. Step 3, developing assets. To ensure your brand is expressed consistently and effectively, it is essential to develop foundational assets. A key one being a brand book. A brand book, which I mentioned before, outlines the brand guidelines that everyone, including internal teams and external contractors, so anyone who is expressing the brand in any way, shape, or form on behalf of your organization, must follow your brand book. The brand book typically includes logo usage, color palette, typography, but it also should include your tone of voice, photographic style, iconography style, and other elements that define the brand's identity. The brand book serves as a living document continually evolving as you identify new opportunities to showcase your brand, or you identify new ways to further focus in the expression of your brand. It should be the single source of truth for maintaining brand consistency across all materials and platforms. Number 2, leveraging existing touchpoints. Use every opportunity to express the brand. Beyond creating foundational assets, evaluate your existing materials and touchpoints for untapped opportunities to enhance brand expression. Virgin's Wi-Fi password example that I shared earlier is a great example of that. It's a small and often overlooked element. Everyone has to communicate what is the Wi-Fi password, and Virgin identified that and used it to further reflect its brand personality. So consider the things your organization is already doing and explore how they can be modified to align more closely with your brand identity to further enhance it. Number 3, maintaining brand consistency. Consistency is key, but many organizations struggle to maintain it. It's common to see inconsistency in materials, especially as new content is developed or you have more people that are writing, for instance, on behalf of the organization. A great example is social media. I often see so many social media platforms for organizations that are very inconsistent. The social media posts do not align with the brand tone or the visual identity. I also often see multiple logo variations that end up being created for specific events or different audiences. In fact, one of our clients a long time ago, it was a large organization that had multiple locations across Alberta. And when we conducted a brand audit, we discovered over 100 variations of their logo. These variations came from well-meaning staff who created customized logos for community events, for instance. So like child-friendly colors for children's events, or they added icons to tailor the logo to specific audiences. Now, while the intent was really positive, the result was a very fragmented brand identity. And this had been going on for a number of years. So at the time we were brought on board to help this organization, no one had any longer a clear idea of what was the right color palette, what were the right elements or icons that were part of the logo and which ones were not. So, and to make matters worse, these variations appeared on so many items like uniforms and jackets and ads, and it really diluted the organization's overall brand impact. So make sure you are consistently monitoring brand use and ensuring consistency. Now, to do this, some actionable steps to maintain that brand integrity is, number 1, create and distribute a comprehensive brand book. Again, ensure that everyone understands and follows those guidelines. Make sure the brand book sits online and that everyone has a link that they can access the latest version of your brand book, and that is the one guide that they must follow. Number 2, audit your materials regularly. So identify inconsistencies, continuously monitor your materials, not only for the look, not only for the logo or the color palette or the design elements, but for the tone of voice and how you are expressing the organization. So monitor that consistently, and any inconsistencies that you identify, address them promptly. Number 3, continue to educate and empower staff. So provide training to help internal teams understand the importance of brand consistency. Everyone is busy, everyone has their plates full. So if this is not top of mind for staff, or if they don't understand what they're looking for in terms of finding those inconsistencies or ensure that they are in alignment with the brand, it may not be something that comes naturally to staff. So continue to provide training on this. Number 4, monitor touch points. Regularly review all content and assets and materials to ensure alignment with the brand, but also to identify new opportunities that you may not have identified before. Number 5, streamline logo usage. So again, make sure the logo is not modified. Make sure that everyone uses what is on the brand book. By developing strong foundational assets, evaluating existing touch points, and implementing ongoing monitoring, you can ensure your brand remains consistent, impactful, and easily recognizable across all platforms and interactions. So it's really a way to utilize your resources very effectively to create the maximum impact. And finally, continuously look for ways to inject the brand at every touch point. I cannot reiterate how important this is. Consider every touch point and always look for ways to how can we express our brand even further. Some examples that I shared with what is done in Disney parks is an example of that. Always try to, as I say, turn up the volume in terms of who you are as an organization. What is your brand? Always remind and reinforce who you are. And that will make your brand continuously to become stronger and more clear to everyone. Let's look at some examples of this. One of the best examples for a brand book is what a charity called Charity Water does. This is an example of some of the pages of Charity Water's brand book. They, of course, have their mission, their values. They go on to express who they are in terms of personality. They also go into specifics about their brand tone, so their tone of voice on how to write or talk on behalf of Charity Water. And you can see here that they talk about being feeling exciting. So water feels exciting and filled with possibility. We also want our brand to be clear in both message and design. We believe in transparency. So those are all indications of who they are as a brand and elements that they need to align to, both visually as well as in tone of voice. They talk about their photo approach. So they focus on hope, not guilt. We never guilt people into giving. Instead, we portray the people we help with dignity. So those are really key and very important guides on how any photo on behalf of Charity Water needs to feel. And you can see some examples of that. Then they have writing tips and tricks, how to write on behalf of Charity Water. And you can see here how it aligns with what we were seeing before in previous pages. So be positive, be clear, be inspirational, be accurate. Then they show examples of style copy. So what is good, what is don't. So in other words, what to do, what not to do, how to write again on behalf of Charity Water. So examples, avoiding big words, because if we want to be clear and if we want to be simple, avoid big words. Stay positive, because again, they want to align with positivity, with possibilities. So this is an example of how both visual and tone of voice can align. They also have examples of words not to use, which are just as important as words to use. So if they want to, for instance, showcase the people they serve with dignity, there are some guides here that are helpful for that. So we don't use third world, for instance, or third world countries, because that message or that those words can be taken as demeaning. Then they provide some boilerplate language. So how to write, again, and with specific examples, using all the guides that we've seen before, these are specific examples of how to write on behalf of Charity Water. Another example is for Old Spice. So this is an actual container, and this, every brand has to have on their packaging information about what are the ingredients, for instance, or how to use the product. So they've identified an opportunity here, Old Spice, to further enhance their brand. So you can see here in this deodorant packaging how it says things like contains odor-fighting atomic robots. If you are at all familiar with Old Spice, you can see how well this aligns with their brand. So this is much like the Virgin Group Wi-Fi password example. This is another example of something that they already have to do as a brand, but they can do it in a way that really expresses and helps further enhance that image of who they are as a brand. These are more examples from the Virgin Group. So these are part of their hotels and their airline. So the first image is, I am always glad to land the wheel. This is their airline cards available at the airport. So instead of not saying anything at all, they see this as an opportunity to, again, further enhance their brand. Or the do not disturb sign in the door of the hotel. Again, how can we use this? But saying the message is similar or has the same intention behind it, but they did it in a way that is reflecting of their brand. Number 4, external launch. When launching a brand externally, it's essential to combine strategic planning with storytelling that connects emotionally with your audience. So how do we do this? Number 1, now that you have your brand platform and your assets developed and staff is fully immersed in the brand, you're ready to launch the brand externally. So start by engaging key stakeholders. Before the public launch, share the new brand with donors and partners. Their buy-in will turn them into ambassadors who spread the word authentically. Number 2, create a multi-channel rollout plan to introduce the brand consistently across your website, social media, any press releases, if you want to do, or it makes sense to do it, newsletters and events. Use visuals, tone, and messaging that align with the brand identity, of course. For nonprofits, partnerships and advocates are powerful. So collaborate with like-minded organizations or influential advocates to amplify your message to their networks. So tap into those resources, those partners, or those advocates of the organization to help with the external launch. And finally, focus on storytelling and impact. If you have been in any of my storytelling workshops, you know how important storytelling is for any organization and how storytelling is the most effective way to really engage people into your organization, to really make sure that people understand and are engaged and wanting to try to help you achieve your purpose. So showcase the change your organization creates, so the value, the impact that you have, using real stories, visuals, and data that resonate with your audiences. People connect with stories. So make the brand about the lives you change. Make the brand about the impact. And if you recall some of the examples that we looked at from the Charity Water brand book, and I encourage you to search online for that, and you will see all of the brand book. It is very much based on that. Focus on the impact you have, the value that you provide to the community and those you serve. When done right, a brand launch doesn't just inform of different audiences that there's a change with the organization, but it should inspire action and build on the trust with your audience. So let's look at some examples. This is the external launch. If you recall, a few years ago, Airbnb had a brand change. They changed their logo, and they did this launch to really reinforce their purpose. As you can see in this billboard, they were reiterating and reinforcing their purpose. We imagine a world where you can belong anywhere. Belong anywhere is their purpose. And they did, of course, many different approaches with multi-platforms, both in advertising, in social media, videos. They created a campaign. So in 2017, they created this campaign. They were protesting the ongoing lack of marriage equality in Australia. So this was a specific campaign for Australia. And the campaign was marketing a ring that is incomplete. So there is a gap in the ring. This gap represents the gap in marriage equality in Australia. And Airbnb was encouraging people to wear the ring, which is calling the acceptance ring, as a way of showing acceptance of marriage equality and support those Australians who could not at the time yet marry. So this was a campaign that was very popular in Australia and really helped reinforce their purpose of belong anywhere. Now, it's really important that when you are launching your brand, you are prepared to demonstrate your genuine commitment to your purpose and values. All the work we've been going through in immersing staff and implementing your brand is to ensure consistency and alignment, because your audiences, internal and external, will demand that. A great example of this is Patagonia. A few years ago, Patagonia launched its new mission or purpose statement, which is, "We are in business to save our home planet." Now, Patagonia has long been considered one of the world's most admired companies, but this is a very ambitious purpose statement. And the company must demonstrate their genuine intentions in the pursuit of this purpose. As you know, Patagonia makes outdoor clothing and accessories. So how can they possibly align with this purpose when they're manufacturing goods? Well, Patagonia gives millions of dollars in annual contributions to environmental causes and land conservation. But most importantly, in the nearly 50 years since they were founded, when they're confronted with inconvenient facts about the harm some of their products are doing, they have consistently chosen to do the right thing, despite considerable both short-term losses and some of them long-term losses to their bottom line. So they have consistently demonstrated and lived by their values, even when it was highly costly, when it was risky, or much harder to do. And that is the key here. So whatever set of values or purpose statement you select for your organization, you must be committed to adhere to them at every time. Now, no organization is perfect, and Patagonia certainly is not. But when you do make a mistake or have a misstep, correcting it so it is in alignment with your purpose and values is critical. And that's what Patagonia has consistently done. And that's why they can stand on this purpose and launch it externally and demonstrated that they are pursuing that purpose. Step 5, ongoing. This is a really important step, and I have been inferring about the importance of always training staff, always keeping your purpose and values top of mind, because if that's not there, it is not real, it is not tangible, it is not given the importance that it has, and it is forgotten or put aside, and then your brand and your value as an organization is affected because of that. So continuously building on your brand, continuously creating ways to keep it top of mind are absolutely critical. To do that, you can create, for instance, rituals and traditions around your core values. So you can develop cultural touch points internally to reinforce those core values regularly. So you may create monthly or quarterly recognition programs, which we talked about when we were talking about operationalizing your values, for instance, and ensuring that all your processes and systems were in place to support that. So this can be one example of that. So creating those monthly or quarterly recognition programs where employees are rewarded for exemplifying those core values, for embodying those core values. You can establish company-wide events or challenges that are tied to the core values, such as community service days, for instance, or demonstrating the value of social responsibility or caring. You can incorporate core values into regular meetings. So with leaders sharing examples or how values have been driven successful outcomes, or bringing stories of examples that they've seen staff live by the values or other colleagues demonstrate the values. So for example, we all have meetings, updates, or status meetings, or weekly meetings, or all staff meetings. So use those opportunities that are already there, where you're already meeting, and to share stories of how they themselves have been challenged, for instance, or faced a dilemma where they had to apply the value, or how they have witnessed, as I mentioned before, a colleague or another staff member demonstrate the value, sometimes in a difficult situation. And this is also a great example, not just to keep the values top of mind, but to actually share additional examples that people may not have thought about before, or other teams may not have thought about before, to say, oh, that's, if somebody is bringing that value to life this way, I can see how we can incorporate that in our team. So it's a great way to also continuously share more and more examples and ideas of how to bring the brand to life. So let's see some examples here. This is an example of Airbnb again. So when there's a new staff that joins the company, it's a very simple thing, but they all come together as a team to welcome that staff. It's not a long meeting or a process, but it's just a way for everyone to welcome this new staff. And they create this tunnel. So existing staff create this tunnel where a new staff runs through it, underneath it, and then jumps into a beanbag. It's a simple thing, but it's a tradition that they have as an organization to demonstrate or to ensure that that new staff member feels like they belong, that everyone is welcoming them to be part of the team. This is, again, an example from Patagonia, where as part of the launch of their new mission statement, we're in business to save our home planet, they took out a full page ad in the New York Times. It was an expensive ad placement, and this was for Thanksgiving, and a time in Black Friday and all that, where there's a lot of people obviously shopping for deals, and they took that as an opportunity to make a statement about their brand. So do not buy this. So going against everything that normally a brand would do at that time. And retailers will looking for more and more shoppers, but in this case, they were reinforcing the fact that don't buy things that you don't need. And of course, Patagonia, if something is wrong with any of their products, customers can take them in and they fix them for free. So they were reinforcing this fact, and how they are in alignment with their brand purpose of saving our home planet. And that's again another example of what Patagonia's website looks like. So they completely, in Black Friday, they take over the entire homepage to have this message there. So instead of having sales, of promoting products for people to buy, they're reinforcing the fact that it's important to not buy things that you don't need. This is an example of a Starbucks. So in all of their monitors, they have this, and they have many other reminders throughout the store in the employees' areas. They have, for instance, in their aprons, in the back of the aprons, they have it sewn in their core values and mission statement. And they use their monitors to, again, reinforce their brand, who they are, and what their core values are. So this is something that is, again, an existing element. So everyone will have, obviously, monitors and computers throughout their offices. You may have some images that come up as people are dialing in. So this can be a way to have messages that reinforce your brand. And this is a way in which Starbucks is also, as you all know, not a perfect company and makes a lot of mistakes, because they have, the larger your company is, the more staff you have, the harder it is to maintain that brand consistency. So you will have issues, you will have problems, you will have people that are in difficult situations and may not follow your values, or may not act or behave in alignment with your values. And that, of course, was a case for Starbucks. There's been many cases, but what is important is that they own that mistake and that they correct or course correct and take steps to ensure that they don't continue to make that mistake. So, which they have done in one case, where an employee did not act in accordance to their values. They shut the store down and had all employees take training again to make sure that they understand how to behave according to their values, and they apologized for it. So this is, it's not a matter of if you're going to make a mistake, is a matter of when, and make sure that your organization is in alignment, or that they course correct and own your mistake. That's really, really critical, and that will actually strengthen your branding in the long term. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you found this course helpful. There was a lot of information shared, so feel free to review all of the different modules, module 1, 2, and 3 again. If you have any questions, if you need any help in either developing or implementing your brand, please feel free to contact me I'm at marcastrategy.com. That's the website, and you can find our contact information there. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in any of my workshops or in future courses. Thank you.